All right, what is going on, everyone, and welcome back to Mets Weekly as we are live at this very moment on YouTube and on X for pregame coverage of the Mets versus Phillies Game 3 of the National League Division Series. Now, before we get into all the craziness as the Mets return home for what we think has been about, 3 years in the making of them being on the road, before we get into all of that, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel for post-game coverage of live recordings of the Mets Weekly podcast, all Mets postseason long. For those of you watching on playback, you want to join the conversation in the future, make sure to turn on those post notifications to not miss when we go live. And of course, after tonight's game, we will be going live for episode number 93 of the Mets Weekly podcast, so make sure to stay tuned for that. For those of you in the live chat right now, we want to let you guys know we love reading your comments, your questions, your concerns, all of your thoughts about this team coming in at the current moment. And if you feel like you're being ignored, you're not being ignored. You're just being starred throughout the show, so we'll try to pull up as many as we can to keep the flow of the conversation going. Also, remember to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok, where we just wrapped up Frank's post-game thoughts after every single Mets regular season game, titled The Mets Frankly Postgame. We'll be sure to have some content during the offseason over there. Before the meantime, for our audio listeners, make sure to follow us on your favorite listening platforms. Not miss the audio version of new episodes, which will be the post-games, as we said. That'll go up at 9 a.m. the following day. Now, without further ado, let's get into our pre-game show. We are now well rested. We had one off day after a intense 2 days in Philly. Frank, I'll go to you. How you feeling? We finally returned home for the first time in 15 days, 3 weeks. It's been a long time since baseball's been played at Citi Field, and it is going to be quite an important one. Game 3, National League Division Series, playoff atmosphere. How you feeling going into this one? Well rested.
Yeah, it felt like the longest off day ever. And for the Mets, just how much of a grind it's been for them. They're lucky to even be playing at Citi Field because they just missed potentially not being at Citi Field till late March of 2025 with how that Brewers series was looking at the end. So, they've come so far to be in a position where they do get to have a home playoff game. And in a very pivotal game 3, you're tied 1-1. You have, by all accounts, who's been your ace in the second half of the season on the mound. So overall, I feel a little nervous, but also excited at the same time just to kind of get back out there and see what happens because, after how tough a loss it was last game, just how much emotions were in between feeling good, feeling bad, you just kind of want to flush that out and just kind of get off to a good feeling again after how well game 1 went. So I do hope that they could kind of return to that form.
Yeah, some of our fellow Mets fans in here. Daniel saying, let's go Mets, as per usual. Christopher, one of our loyal viewers who has come back from the dead recently, saying, what's up, Carson and Frank? That's us. He's saying hi to us. In case any of you don't know, my name's Carson. That's Frank. Just letting everybody know, because, yes, we had an off day. Some people forget. I'm just saying. But we're going into, of course, like you just said, hinting, Manaea versus Aaron Nola. Manaea has had a fantastic season. Obviously, we all know that when it comes to free agency, he is going to get paid. And he definitely got the postseason monkey off his back last time that he faced Milwaukee. I believe it was 5 innings of 2-run ball, a lot more quality than compared to what he was doing in Oakland before. Obviously, he's a little bit different of a pitcher now. So we're hoping to see another day where he keeps us in the game, which is the main goal, of course, of postseason baseball, of the starting pitcher, to keep us in the game. And that has definitely been the story so far from the starting pitching after all 5 postseason games that they have played, which is really good to see. Now, the main thing that has definitely been the main question has been the bullpen, and we will get into some of the bullpen situation, kind of configuring that in the puzzle, trying to figure that out of who's hot and who is not, and kind of configure what they can do, because it's definitely been a little bit of a concern in this postseason. But again, the Mets are in a position as to where this series is tied at 1. They get into a pivotal game 3 now. They get the home field advantage for the first time in this postseason, and hopefully the Mets can come out victorious. I'd love to see them win back-to-back games and finish this off, go to the National League Championship Series. But like we said, and what we were reminded of last game, in Game 2, like we said, this is a good Phillies team, and this is going to be a tough battle no matter what. So at the end of the day, this is a really good Phillies team, and hopefully they can shut them down as they have been able to from the starting pitching side so far for the most part. But this is going to continue to be a battle because the Mets definitely do match up well with this team, and hopefully the results show that. But as for now going into a Game 3, Sean Manaea, the full-on confidence level in him, I think that it's a good enough matchup as to where it can go either way. But I'd say that we can go on this from a scale of 1 to 10. Frank, how are you feeling about Sean Manaea going into this game?
Right now I'm at a 5 because I was at the game that he pitched at Citi Field against the Philadelphia Phillies, and all in all, he turned out a really good start. He was able to work deep into the ball game, going the 7 innings on only 89 pitches. Now, the problem he did face was the home run ball, and we know that's kind of how this Phillies offense works. It is very home run heavy, and it's led by the guy at the top, Kyle Schwarber, who attacked Sean Manaea in the last outing, and that was lefty-lefty, and even Schwarber went left center, first batter of the game. So I do want to see Manaea definitely be a little more careful with Schwarber, especially starting off in that first inning. I feel like that's kind of one of those big advantages that Philly has with Schwarber, that leadoff spot. It's just the ability to kind of make a game 1-0 on the first pitch or first batter of the game can definitely really mess up your momentum and just kind of how you approach the overall game. So I do want to do that to be a focal point for him. And overall, in his start against the Brewers in the last series, he pitched pretty good. So I think overall, like, there are some things that I feel good about, some things that it's like, but we still know about the previous Sean Manaea playoff experience that gives us some cause for concern. But I think overall, I feel pretty good.
I mean, I've always been one who's been a really big supporter of Sean Manaea in the way that he can definitely give you a lot of consistency regarding the volume when he does get on a roll. The only thing you need to get from him is to start on that roll, because there's going to be a short leash if this starts off pretty tough. And obviously we know that Kyle Schwarber definitely set the tone last time that he faced them. We know that there was somebody else that homered. I think, was it Castellanos against him? Yeah, and he has quite he has quite a history against Sean Manaea as well. So we'll see.
He had a great game last game too. You feel like he might have a
yeah.
little bit of the hot bat going, and batting right after Bryce Harper. That it's that 1 through 4 on Philly that really scares you a lot. And obviously, Bohm, he's been a struggle. Remuto, we know he's capable of. But, with the Mets going with the left-hander for the first time this series, you now get to see Austin Hayes making the start over Marsh. You see Sosa over Bryson Stott, who gave the Mets some trouble last game. And then Rojas out there as well once again. So the Phillies now get to go a little bit of a different combination facing the left-hander.
Yeah, definitely a matchup that I think is going to be more induced as to, how they do with the bottom of this order. Like I said, we talked about this before Game 1 even started. The Mets do need to take advantage of that bottom part of the order. And even though Bryson Stott did get after Edwin Diaz later on that game, in Game 2, the bottom third of this order really has not done well so far. In this postseason, and they're really counting on the top of the lineup to do more of the damage. We know that Alec Boehm has been struggling as well. Realmuto can still be a threat. Obviously, he's not the threat he used to be, but he still can be. And then, of course, you have the top of this lineup that is, the ones that you expect to wreak havoc the most against your starting pitchers. Hopefully, we can just get a roll from Sean Manaea, and that's really what I really want to see. Just him get into the groove. Of course, using the top of the zone the best way that he does. I feel like the main goal here for him is just not letting anybody in the batter's box today feel comfortable whatsoever. Don't let them square up the baseball whatsoever. Locate properly. And then, of course, not getting, I would say like it's more of a factor against the Brewers of not walking as many batters because we all know that they would run all over you. The Phillies, it's a little bit different. If you walk someone, you have a chance of turning a double play, mainly because how many ground balls this Phillies team does hit. But again, any threat that they have, it's more of just with the power, of course.
Just don't walk the bottom half. As like we said, just don't walk
Yeah.
the 7 through 9. You don't want any guys on base for Schwarber, for Turner, for Harper Castellanos, because as we saw with Budo in the last game, like hitting the batters and giving up those hits to the bottom half of the order kind of changes the whole game plan of like we talk so much about like third time around the order, fourth time around the order, as far as what you want to do matchup wise. Like here's a guy that I wonder when he's available. Maybe tomorrow, I would think if let's say Philly wins today. But like having David Pearson available for the middle innings to get like Schwarber and Harper, if someone else could get the bottom half of the order out, that's also a big key as far as like, are they going to utilize Diaz in the same way where maybe he comes in the 8th instead of the 9th if Schwarber and Harper are due up?
Yeah, obviously going through these matchups and going through it lefty righty is the definitely the best way to probably do it, especially with somebody like Sean Manaea on the mound. Mainly because Peterson is pretty much the only viable lefty coming out of that bullpen right now. And he's thrown like a good amount of pitches, let's just say, in this last week, even though he is still stretched out to be a starter. And like I do think that he most likely will be available today because of the days of rest. We'll see what happens. I don't know. He did not pitch in game 2. He did not pitch yesterday, so he has had 2 days of rest. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. He's still stretched out as a starter, so most likely he'll have a few pitches in him, but I don't know if he's going to be able to go 3 innings as opposed to maybe just 1 or 2 innings. We'll see. As many outs that he would have to get.
If they need him to go 3 innings, we're in big trouble. That was like a different circumstance for Manaea being the opener. I feel like for Sean, like if he can go 7 again, like he did last time against the Phillies, great. But we need at least 6, I feel like. And then if you want to just have maybe Pearson do the 1 inning today and just get that top half of the order. But it kind of depends because also one of the reasons why they used Peterson was they had the right-hander. Now they give them the look with the left-hander. But in this case, since you already have a lefty starter, it doesn't have the same effect, even though these are 2 different pitchers with different arm slots. But still, it just kind of might change things up as well. And also like trying to really kind of keep an eye on when, and here's actually another thought of maybe having Pearson face the bottom half of the order to prevent Bryson Stott and maybe Brandon Marsh and these guys from entering the game a little earlier, because you feel like once Manaea comes out and the bottom half of the order is up, those guys are coming back in. So I feel like trying to that little bit of chess, so to speak, to try to prevent some moves is also another thing that could be considered too.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we know about the righty lefty. I've never been one to really give like the full on thing about it. If you can't hit both lefties and righties, I've always been one who's like, who cares? And just, they're a part-time player or they just don't belong in a major league lineup. But when it comes to the specifics of getting outs, of course, like the bottom of the order leading the top of the order, like we just said, they got to attack the bottom of this order in order to keep this like an actual game, in order to stay in this game, because we know that the most damage is going to come from the top of that order, and the top of that order is not going to go a combined 16 for 16 like they will get out at one point. And then that bottom third of the order, they have to attack them. They need to continue to challenge them, and that was one of the main costs as to why they lost that game too. I mean, like we said, Budo hitting the 9-hole hitter, that couldn't happen, or somebody else walked the 9-hole hitter. They just weren't able to get that extra out that they needed, and those extra outs come from the bottom of the order. So they need to get those from there to set themselves up into a good position, especially today where it's Hayes, Sosa, and Rojas, but all of them are pretty much light enough bats as to where you can get the favorable matchup, especially against somebody like Sean Manaea. Most of the guys in the bullpen that I do trust regarding that. And going into the bullpen of availability, like we already have hinted, I do think that you will see Stanek again today. I do think that you might see Maton, depending on what the matchup is.
We should really see Reed.
You should see Reed as well. Yeah. I think that you're going to see Maton against the bottom of the order today.
Yeah.
I do think that that's going to happen. If you have 7 due up, 7, 8, 9 due up, they're going to probably go to Maton to try and set it up for the top of the order, maybe in the ninth or something regarding Diaz's availability. We know Ottavino and Young are going to be available, but again, I would not go to them, even if my life depended on it and they were the only two on the earth. And then Garrett should be available. I don't think Tyler McGill is going to be available. Neither do I think Budo will be available either. Like we said, the amount of innings that he pitches, that's most likely how many days that he probably should have off.
They didn't
I
even
don't know
get
how
an
long
inning out of him,
pitched,
though.
but
He did inning and 2/3. He wasn't great.
How many pitches
but
did he throw? That's
maybe around
that's
like
the question.
early 20s, I'd say at most. He didn't go too far.
He might be
So,
he might be available, but probably only for one
but the
inning.
things that, like, if you
Yeah.
have Reed and you have some other guys, and hopefully Manaea goes deep to games, you shouldn't have to use him. You know what I mean? Like, ideally, I like to stay away from him. And like you said, I'd rather go Reed, Stanek, Diaz if Manaea could give me 6 and just go good morning, afternoon, good night kind of thing.
Yeah, obviously, I think that, you never know. This bullpen has definitely been just the main weakness so far throughout the postseason, I'd say. But they were able to hold it together, of course, with this team coming back the way that they have. But they're going to have to figure it out. You need a good bullpen in order to lock these things down in the postseason. You can't just continue to rely on these incredible... You can't just rely on these incredible comebacks to happen every single time in the ninth inning, even though this has continued to be the Mets' identity. But I think that when it comes to the overall pitching strategy, I still do believe, and even though there are some Mets fans that don't believe this, I still think that pretty much every single time, at least 9 times out of 10 so far in this postseason, Carlos Mendoza has pushed the right buttons. I do believe that he has. He just did not really have that many buttons in game 2 with the bullpen game in game 1. So we'll see what happens in regards to that. I do think that I understand the matchups. The only one that I haven't really understood regarding this entire postseason was putting in Phil Maton in game 2 against Milwaukee. Against the top of the order, which I don't think that he belongs facing the top of the order. I think it's more of a matchup thing or a situational thing regarding somebody like Phil Maton. It's not even just anything to do with his struggles. It's just like throwing 88-mile-an-hour cutters down the pipe to left-handed hitters who can just crush the ball at any site of anything in the zone. You just can't be doing stuff like that. It's just it's not a good matchup. It's not favorable at all.
It's not a great matchup for him. I wonder if maybe you have a little more, like you said, against that bottom field that's very right-handed heavy and it's a little more light hitting. It's mostly those kind of guys that maybe you can get away with it, because I wouldn't be throwing that stuff to Harper and those guys. They can just crush it.
Yeah, Jeffrey coming in terms of the matchup, saying don't underestimate Bryce tonight, Rusty August and September, but he is known to go absolutely bonkers in the postseason. Personally, I expect him to go nuts. I don't underestimate him at all. He's Bryce Harper. He's one of the kings of prime time there. Let's just say he lived up to the chosen one hype ever since the beginning. Let's just say that. I always expect that dude to do damage. Even though he's had his struggles against the Mets before, he's also had his dominant moments against the Mets before. So yes, like we've said, with the Phillies, that pretty much sums up as to what happens with this rivalry, as they continue just to have good battles, and that's why this is going to be continue to be a really good series no matter what. I know that this is going to be a tough series for fans of the team, let's just say that, because there's going to be a lot at stake. But regarding of the Mets and Phillies in the current situation, I do want to mention, even though we still want to win, and even though we will still be as nervous as possible in these postseason games, the Mets already exceeded their expectations. The Phillies are World Series bust at this point. So I do expect this team to continue to be as loose as they have been. They are not the tense team in this matter. The Phillies have definitely not played fantastic baseball in this series so far. Obviously, they want to continue. But when it comes to the Mets and the pressure on them, They have the home fans behind them now for the first time in a long time. You also have Francisco Lindor going up to the plate for the first time in 30 days at Citi Field. Remind you with the, everything going on with his back injury, as that injury happened on the road. I mean, everything has been happening on the road as for all of the life-changing events in September. So again, when it comes to the Mets, just absolutely in terms of the pressure, I mean, I really don't think that there is much when it comes to this team, like, again, exceeding the expectations the way that they have. And I think that really just shows throughout what we have been seeing. I mean, Grimace is literally taking a trip on the subway or on the 7 line or whatever. I mean, there can't be a more team that is more relaxed than the Mets right now. I understand that, we still do have a job to be done. We still want to win. But we know that we do have somewhat of a bright future ahead of us. We know that we have the right guy running the job. So I personally think that, I'm still going to be nervous regarding these games. I still want them to win. But, once they do lose, if they do end up losing, I'm like, okay, well, what are you going to do? That's kind of how I kind of personally, sure, I will be upset for the time being. But yes, they lost that game in game 2. I shook it off the next day. Like, I'm like, let's move on. It's okay. We're tied 1-1. It's a whole different series. It's best of 3. Something the Mets have done well, winning 3-game series all year. I'm okay with it. Again, like we've said, our third mic saying Andrew, who I believe, I can confirm this, I believe will be here for Game 3 post game. He did say, everything right now that happens is just gravy at this point on the top of this big feast that we have had since the comeback of June 1st. Now, I think that, that's the mentality that I look at it, of the reality of, yes, the Mets could go on a magical run because I believe that they could beat this team. I definitely do think they can because, again, like we've said, they do match up very well against them. But at the end of the day, this is a really good Phillies team. This is a really good team. So if they do end up beating us, I wouldn't be shocked. But again, we are in a pivotal Game 3, and I think we need to remind ourselves that, don't stay as tense as you think you will, because I do believe that under the current situation we are under, I'm really hoping that this is a yearly occurrence. So this is not going to be like an every other year type of thing. I'm hoping that we are in the playoffs every single year. And that's how I'm looking at it from going forward. We're still in the postseason, of course, but that's kind of like the mentality that I have at this current moment. But obviously, I'm still rooting for them to win. They still make me nervous. They still kill me. But regarding the situation going forward, I think that, the expectations are more on the Phillies as compared to the Mets as of right now. I don't know if that's the feeling you get, Frank, but that's kind of how I got it with here, because the Mets, they just got into the playoffs and they just got hot at the right time.
Yeah, I mean, this core for the Phillies has already been to the big dance, and as far as like this Mets team, like we said, this was very much a little bit of a transition year, but also kind of getting to figure out where we're going direction kind of year, as far as like the 1-year deals, the money coming off the books that's given to players who are no longer on this roster, and guys like Scherzer and Verlander, and really just trying to piece it together and see what you got. And really, I mean, the pieces have fallen to place very nicely to where you are in this point, and you are playing this Phillies team very tough. But you have to remember the money that is committed to Wheeler, Nola, Harper, Schwarber, Realmuto. And you talk about the Mets payroll all you want, but a lot of this money has come off the books for the Mets. But for the Phillies, they have a lot committed. Trey Turner, another guy. Like, they've really invested a lot in this Phillies team. And, right now they're also very, very healthy. I mean, that's kind of one of the other things that I feel like kind of goes under the radar. Like we talk about so much, like the fact that we haven't really had Brooks Raley all season, the national media doesn't really talk about how much of a difference maker he could be in a series like this with the lefties that the
Yep.
Phillies have. So I feel like not having him, not having Nunez, who have been another massive piece. We might win game two, honestly, if we have Nunez. So it's like the Mets are playing down with a couple guys. Obviously, McNeil is down as well, if that counts, whatever. But this Phillies team is not missing anyone big. Like they have all their all-star relievers. They have their entire lineup, every single position player. So they have everything clicking in the right mode for them right now, which doesn't always happen for teams. I mean, you never know. Next year, someone could go down, Castellanos could go down or whatever, and then all of a sudden you're missing that big bat. So the Phillies, like this is, and like a lot of people have said, the baseball is wide open right now. You know, you had no 100 win teams, no one overly dominant, even though the Dodgers look great on paper. I mean, look what the Padres did some last game. So it's kind of anyone's series right now. And another really big note is that every single series right now is tied 1-1, both in National League and the American League. So right now, nobody's running away with anything. No one is a prohibited favorite for anything. So for the Phillies, it's like this is their best chance to go all the way. So they feel like they need to win this series in order to get there. So I definitely feel there certainly is a lot more pressure on them. But you know what? Like we said, getting the split at CBP was huge because, like you said, this team hasn't been here in 3 weeks. We don't know if this team was going to come back here. And really, it's what I'm looking at is what reception Alonso gets because he got criticized all year. Now he has to come back after his big hit against the Brewers. He has a home run in Philly. And now he finally gets to get that reward that the crowd has been waiting to give him because the crowd was going crazy even when the team was playing in Milwaukee with their watch parties. So you just have to imagine that it is going to be a wonderful atmosphere. So, we'll see how Nola reacts to it, how these Phillies players react to it, because it's going to be loud. It's going to be exciting. So I am just very curious to see how hopefully the crowd could give us that little bit of boost that we need to maybe push us over the edge.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to a New York crowd, it continues to have that type of boost as compared to any other fan base. Like I said, you have had 16 days since you have played your last home game. You have 30 days since Francisco Lindor took an AB at Citi Field. So when it comes to that, that is a long time to hold off a New York fan base from seeing their team at home. Like that's a long time. So they are chomping at the bit right now. Mets fans are doing it right now. Yankee fans have been able to see their team at home. When it comes to the Mets, they've been on the road. They've been road warriors for pretty much like all of for a long time of September, like a majority of September. I mean, when it comes to the Mets going on the road the way that they have and the way that schedule was designed, it was pretty much designed for the Mets to like pretty much lose out. Like it really was when you think about it. But the Mets were able to, hold tight the way that they have and get the job done in the most dramatic fashion possible because that's just how this team identifies this time. And we're just hoping to keep it going and send it all the way to Queens. And I'm hoping that continues to rub off on them. I'm hoping that nobody, even though they had the off day, no one's here to dwell on the Game 2 loss again. Like I said, they just couldn't finish the job against a really good Phillies team. So I think that the confidence level, I still say, is the same going into Game 2 as of right now. I know you have those certain worries of things just collapsing the way that we've seen them collapse before, but I'm just, again, like we've said with the Mets, it seems like right now, currently, they just have nothing to lose. They really don't have anything going on like for long term right now. It all will be a clean slate at one point. And I understand that everybody wants to win. If they lose, it's not going to be great. But in terms of the expectations, they definitely exceeded those this year. And they did what they needed to do. And if they end up losing, like you just said, we have tons of money coming off the books. They have such a chance to fix whatever problems they faced going throughout this season. And there definitely were a lot of problems, even though they did make the playoffs. There definitely were a lot of pieces of inconsistency that they definitely need to fill in the offseason. But regarding, the current situation that they're in a good spot regardless. I mean, if they do end up winning the World Series by some magical point that they have been able to do all year of just working magic, they do have the opportunity to maybe bring back a few pieces, or maybe, maybe they also have the luxury to like go after some of the even bigger free agents when, they go on from that philosophy of if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. Maybe they can just clean it out completely. Like they're in a really good spot as of right now where, like we said, everything right now is gravy. Like if they end up losing and they end up falling short the way that the way that we've seen them do it before, they have a plan in place now. It's not like 2015 where they fell short in the World Series. Everything just went haywire. Everyone got injured. Nobody could find any whatsoever consistency. And they went back to being the Mets again. Like right now at this current moment, they have a plan under it. And even though there are, those growing pains that they've gone through all year, right now they're in the current right direction as to where they have a foundation to move on from this, whether they win or lose. And that's kind of how I look at it for the long term. When it comes to short term, I would be upset if they were to lose this game 3. I would be upset if they lose the series, obviously. But again, like I said, the level of pressure that goes on to, this team, Big Three coming in saying, fuck the Mets. You know what? Listen, I expect you, if you're a Phillies fan, to say nothing more. Like you guys obviously want to win. Everyone wants to win. But when it comes to the overall pressure, it's on the Phillies as of right now. So I think that, the Mets are in a really good spot at this current moment. They did their job. They stole a game in Philly, and now they have a chance to clinch it in front of their home fans. And hopefully they can continue it and keep it going. And hopefully this magical run continues. But as for other things that I do want to talk about, and that is obviously our matchup with somebody that we know very, very well for a long time, who's been in the league for, I don't know, more than 10 years now, that being Aaron Nola, the workhorse himself. Now, for those of you who don't know about Aaron Nola, let's give a little bit of a rundown because he has definitely taken a little bit of a dip recently, but is still a really productive pitcher. Just need a drink of water. My apologies, folks. But as for Aaron Nola, for those of you who don't know, he's a 5-pitch right-hander. Main pitch is his curveball, 33%, 28% four-seam, 20% sinker, 10% changeup, and 9% cutter. His best graded pitch is that curveball, as per usual, as it always has been. Sits 79 to 80, tops 81, over 60 inches of vertical drop with RPMs in the 2600s, and of course the grades, which are pretty much borderline elite. 135 stuff plus, a 106 command plus, and a 113 pitching plus. The rest of it are the arsenal. Glove side fastball that sits 92, 93, tops 95 with over 15 inches of induced vertical break, a heavy running sinker in the low 90s, a mid 80s screw motion changeup, which you also can just also call the screwball, and of course a hybrid cut fastball or a cutter to the arm side as per usual. And then some other notes. Obviously, we know that he has the low arm angle that really induces those chases well below the strike zone. We know he doesn't walk many. He has the spotty command, which we will get into, of course. Hitters this year are registering a 348 expected WOBA, or quality of contact, against his sinker, and also a 44.3% hard hit rate. Left-handed hitters this year against his cutter, which he likes to jam into left-handed hitters to get them out. They have a 693 OPS versus his cutter this year, and an 886 OPS versus Nola's changeup. So left-handed hitters have definitely been quite a bugaboo, let's just say, against Nola, specifically with his secondary stuff. We already know that he loves to get ahead in the count, 66.6% first pitch strike rate, which is 9th among starting pitchers. And then, of course, his career versus the Mets, a 3.46 earned run average in 28 starts and 164 innings pitched. So as for when it comes to Aaron Nola, we know that he can be a Jekyll and Hyde pitcher when it comes to the Mets. The Mets have gotten to him, and he's also gotten to the Mets. Like M. Easy coming in here saying, didn't Nola strike out 10 straight Mets at Citi Field before? Yes, he absolutely did. I think that he came close to like a consecutive strikeout record that like Tom Seaver had for a second.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, definitely there is a history there, but the Mets have also gotten his number recently. So we'll see what happens. Again, it can go either other way. It's a pivotal matchup, Nola versus the Mets. It always has been, and it's a pivotal game three. So it's definitely perfectly a you know perfectly categorized. As for Aaron Nola, what are you seeing in terms of this matchup, Frank? Obviously, we have Winker in there as the left-handed hitter instead of JD Martinez, but the lineup is pretty much the same, except for Taylor and Bader kind of switching out. But this team matching up against Nola, I think the last time they definitely took him out. They homered a lot against him, I believe. That was like that 12-2 win or 11-3 win in Philly. That was the only win, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing I'm looking at with Nola, this actually goes credit to our guy Keith, someone who's been on the Mets Weekly channel, but he posted the stat that Nola has not made a start in a long time for the Phillies. I mean, this kind of
Yep.
goes to that whole first round bye thing we were talking about, as far as the potential of rust versus rest. And since Nola hasn't pitched in so long, typically when he has those extended periods of rest, he actually doesn't perform well. So, I mean, that's something I'm going to watch is kind of what his effectiveness level is like, being that he's not pitching well. And then maybe it takes him a couple innings to get settled in. And then once he does, then maybe we're in trouble. So I feel like this is kind of another one of those things where it's like strike early while you have the chance, while he's maybe shaking off the rust. So I feel like that's something that really kind of stands out to me the most. Definitely trying to attack early. Maybe he doesn't have command right away. He's walking some batters. He might have some golden opportunities there. But the last time he did face the Mets was September 13th, where the Mets did score those 6 runs off of him. He gave up 2 home runs. So it definitely was a very nice outing from the Mets offense. But even just kind of in general, he hasn't really been missing bats too much. His last start was September 29th against the Washington Nationals. He gave up 9 hits, didn't walk anybody, gave up 3 runs. Start before that against the Cubs, 7 hits, a couple runs. So he hasn't really been missing too many bats recently. Even the start before the Mets, 9 hits against Miami. So it was not the greatest of Septembers for Aaron Nola. So I'm just kind of curious to see what he's looking like. And being the fact that he has such an extended rest, maybe they let him throw a lot of pitches in this game. We'll kind of see how everything shakes out. But those are some of the things that I'm watching for him tonight. It's just kind of seeing where he's at as far as like, is he on his game or does it take a little bit for him to get settled in?
Yeah, obviously, speaking of like the days of rest, that's actually in one of the keys to the game, of course, that I have. So definitely thank you for that hint of transitioning over there. But I say that usually for the end. But when it comes to Aaron Nola, I think that you get two different pitchers against. I feel like you either get like the worst start of his career against the Mets or the best start of his career, and really, hopefully they don't. They take advantage of him being as rusty as he most likely will be in terms of 9 days rest now. So we'll see what happens there. We know that Aaron Nola is one of those mileage pitchers that kind of likes to pitch a lot, and he has like that sort of routine rhythm. So we'll see what happens. I'm hoping that the Mets can get to him early. We know that he's also been known to do well second through the order, third time through the order. Like he starts to get a little bit better throughout the game and starts to settle in. So they're going to have to rattle him the first few times through the order. They definitely have the stage set in order to hit him hard, but we'll see what happens. Again, we don't know, but you do have some numbers against. Going against you do have some numbers going against him and going for this Mets offense that has seen Aaron Nola a lot in their career. We know that Francisco Lindor has not really boded well against Aaron Nola in his career. Recently, he's been a little bit better, but ever since he came to the Mets, he has not really had the best career numbers against Aaron Nola. But as for other players that I do want to talk about to watch, as for the matchups, when it comes to Pete Alonso, I think that this is the main guy. This is his game to be the main guy who carries this offense. Obviously, his career versus Nola pretty much says it. 16 for 50 all time. He has 5 homers, Three doubles. He's definitely had his career success against him. He's faced him a lot. Recently, I don't know how it has been recently because, this year when he was facing Nola, he definitely has not been the Pete Alonso that we have seen of old, being the run producer that we know he can be, but hopefully he can tap into it. We know that this is definitely a favorable matchup for him all time. And then Tyrone Taylor, who's 4 for 10 against Aaron Nola, who definitely could set up these situations for somebody like Alvarez right after him, Lindor, Vientos, and just like the big guys on top, where Tyrone Taylor could set this up and also maybe steal a base or two just to get somebody into runners, to get a runner into scoring position. That could possibly happen. We have not seen them use their legs that much in this series. I'm hoping we see a little bit more regarding that, just to continue the great situational hitting that they were able to do in that first game, and then also a little bit in that second game, but it was more based off of the home run ball, just kind of getting that timely hitting, timely power. Now, regarding Sean Manaea, we know Nicholas Castellanos has quite a career against him, 3 home runs. He is 5 for 15. Trey Turner also has quite a rap sheet against Sean Manaea, 5 for 16 with a home run. So I'm not really sure how many of those plate appearances were when he was a different pitcher in San Francisco, or maybe it might be all year, because I'm pretty sure Manaea faced this Phillies team like 3 times this year. So maybe it adds up half and half or something like that. But when it comes to the overall matchups, I'm definitely looking at Pete Alonso here. Winker, of course, we see him as somebody who could hit right-handed pitching. He's been okay against Nola, not great, but definitely somebody who we're also looking to. I know that Marte has had some success, but not crazy success against Nola. Who else are you looking at this lineup, of course, because they've definitely seen Aaron Nola a lot in the past. So, you're hoping that something evens out and something comes through.
Yeah, I mean, the first guy I have my eye is Brandon Nimmo. He hit the home run against Nola the last time that Nola faced the Mets, so he's someone I'm hoping he could kind of do that. And then the same thing goes with the next guy, Francisco Alvarez. He also hit a home run against Aaron Nola in that big start at Citizens Bank Ballpark. So it'd be great to see Alvarez get his first postseason homer. He's been able to chip in with some singles and things like that, so he's been doing some stuff, but we need a little bit of that power source as well, since we know it's not going to come from Iglesias and not going to come from Marte. Hasn't really come from Winker either, so it hasn't not come from Taylor. So, you're going to need it from somebody else. Alonso's been able to provide it. Obviously, Vientos and Nimmo have done it. So you want to see Alvarez be a next man up to also maybe hit the long ball. Because like we said, up against the better pitchers, it's hard to string those consecutive hits together. So getting that one big hit goes a long way. And I really hope that Alvarez could be the one to provide that.
11 for 31 is Marte against Aaron Nola. So he does have a good career against him. Recently, he hasn't really had much success against him. 2023, he was awful, but he was just awful in general. He definitely got his number in 2022, that great year that he had, going 6 for 14 against him in that series. I mean, Marte was playing at an absolutely different level. I mean, Easy saying we need Alvarez to stand up. Probably, I think he's saying step up. Yeah, obviously from the 9 hole. Hopefully that he can set some things up. Of course, I do want to see some of the power translate a little bit. And again, there's another point that we made earlier on. The Met pitchers need to dominate 7 through 9 in the Phillies lineup. Of course, like we said, setting that stuff up the way that they can. Don't put themselves in a shittier position that you possibly can. Compared to what you can get from the top of the order. So, I think that when it comes to, the matchups, again, like I said, Pete Alonso has quite a history against Aaron Nola. Hopefully he can tap into it. It would be a big help. Tyrone Taylor, you can also add Starling Marte to that mix. You're hoping that you get something from Francisco Lindor, who hasn't really boded well against Aaron Nola. We'll see what happens in terms of that. But Lindor will be batting from the left side. Left-handed hitters have definitely teed off on the secondary stuff of Aaron Nola. And when it comes to the keys to them winning this game as a team, putting it all together, I do want to get into Carson's keys to this game, which now I have graphics for. Yay, everybody has something fun to look at. And of course, I have these three main keys as for more of the matchup sense, mainly because it's more of specifics. Every single thing that we went into going in. First one, of course, regarding to Sean Manaea. Sink to swim. It's actually sink to swim, not sink to swim. We just had a little bit of a typo there. My bad. But although that Manaea is not the best contact manager, Manaea's ladder running sinker has been one of the best pitches in all of baseball, with a negative 15 run value and opponents posting a 267 expected weighted on base average against it. As an uppercut team, the Phillies, like we have said, they have the fourth highest ground ball rate against left-handed pitching this season, with the majority of that coming from their struggles against sinkers. Manaea needs to challenge both right-handed hitters and left-handed hitters with high sinkers to take advantage of the swing and miss and launch angle tendencies. From a more refined arm angle, he has a little bit new deception as well. Manaea has the ability to prevent a lot of A swings against a power-dependent opponent, such as the Phillies, so don't make them feel comfortable in the box whatsoever. And I think that's the main key for Manaea to get on a roll today. Reps of rust, which we already hinted earlier on in the show. Going into today's start, Aaron Nola has not made a start in 9 days. Although he's been given the big game title in the recent years, consistent reps will always be important to a starting pitcher, and also of the caliber of Aaron Nola. And they're really important to Nola, as hitters are slashing 416, 466, 675 with a 208 OPS plus when Nola is pitching on 6+ days of rest. This is 9 days of rest that he is pitching on. In fact, this has been a factor for Nola throughout his entire career, posting a 5.27 earned run average with 6+ days of rest. That is over a 167.2 innings pitched sample. So with 9 days of rest, the possibility of Nola not being as sharp tonight, at least to start off the game, is very high. The Mets cannot give Nola a chance to work off the rust. And as for the third one, you knew that this one was going to be coming. Premium power. When at his best, Nola does not really give up many base runners. Recently he has, but in his career, he has always been perennially sitting at that 1.1 to 1.3 whip throughout his entire career. One thing that he gives up a lot and always has been the home run ball. Nola has surrendered 61 home runs over the past 2 seasons, which is the most among starting pitchers in that span. 15.8% of fly balls off Nola leave the yard, which is the second highest among starting pitchers this season. The approach against Nola is pretty simply said. See the ball, lift the ball, and destroy the ball. 41 of the 67 runs that Nola has allowed against the Mets in his career have been off of the home run. Now, I'm just going to fix this typo that I have in the keys to the game here. But Frank, what do you think about these keys to the game and the recipe for success going into Game 3?
Yeah, I think the ground ball one is definitely a big one. You're hoping that you could really get those timely ground balls to get out of some jams and really kind of use that to lower pitch counts. You're trying to get those 2-for-1s in certain instances where you're able to get multiple outs in a short amount of time. Will lead to Manaea working deeper into the game. Less bullpen today means more bullpen tomorrow, where you'll definitely need it with Jose Quintana pitching. So that's one thing I'm looking at too. But then one of the other things I'm also interested about, we talk so much about like hot streaks or guys getting hot at the right time. I feel like it doesn't get talked about enough because they lost the game, but Mark Vientos hitting the 2 home runs and just really maybe trying to make himself a big name here, trying to have himself a huge series. And I found it very interesting that Lindor said something to the effect of like, you know what, he's making himself very famous. And, I just kind of wonder if it gets to the point where maybe the Mets get a little pressure to have to give Vientos a bigger contract earlier than they maybe might have anticipated if he goes on to have like this incredible postseason, and like it's gonna look kind of silly if he doesn't get paid. So I do look at something like that too, and just hoping that he could continue that hot stretch and maybe be the one to carry us, because like you said, Lindor doesn't have those great career numbers against Nola. He's yet to hit a home run this postseason. We know with Alonso, it could be spotty. Same goes for Nimmo. But I feel like just having the young guy who's batting two really be the hot bat to carry them would also help us out a ton and really just make life a lot easier. And going up against a pitcher who gives up home runs as well. So, and I feel like just seeing, like I said, just some of these guys who haven't hit a postseason home run yet finally get one, whether that be Winker or Marte or Taylor or Alvarez. If we, like someone mentioned about the bottom half of the line, like Jeffrey said it, if we can get one of those guys to go yard, I feel like that would also really help us out a ton and just make this game much, much more easier to win.
Yeah, obviously, like I have said, like in the situational sense, the Mets have definitely played it well recently, I would say, when it comes to getting those timely hits the way that they have had. We know that the bullpen has been one of the main struggles, of course. But I would say that, this is definitely one of the main factors of this game is to beat Nola with the home run ball, beat him with extra base hits, beat him in those situations where he can't utilize the sinker on the ground. And this year, his sinker, again, has been getting crushed, not in the expectation that Aaron Nola would want. He has still been able to give some consistency. We already know how much of a workhorse he is, but we all know that regarding Aaron Nola, if he does get into a groove, there's a strong possibility you could see him going all 9 innings if he does not give up anything. Because we know, like I said, like this guy continues to contend for 200 innings every single season, no matter what. So, and I'm pretty sure he pitched a complete game against us this year, didn't he? I'm pretty sure he did. Complete game shutout, complete game
For
home
Nola?
run. I don't know. Yeah, Nola. I think he pitched a
Hold
complete
up.
game against us this year. Because like that's just continues when he gets on that roll, he can give you innings. He'll continue to
Mhm.
get that.
Yeah.
I think that when it comes to the matchup with Sean Manaea, again, like I said, he's not the best contact manager around, but again, he does need to use that sinker to his advantage as to where he can get some guys to roll over with the uppercut team that the Phillies are as compared to a team like the Brewers who just get a lot of base runners and just wreak havoc on the base paths.
Yeah. May
Um,
14th, 9 innings, 4 hits,
yep,
8 strikeouts, no walks.
nice. Fantastic. Like we said, I mean, he doesn't allow many base runners. So again, it's just going to be a premium type of
But
situation.
Carson, let me give you the personnel. Let's have a little fun here since we have a little bit of time. Let me give you some of the guys who were in the lineup that day. We have your
Yeah.
favorite Brett Beatty. We had Joey Wendell starting at second base with DJ Stewart pinch hitting. Omar Narvaez was your starting catcher. And I think Tyrone Taylor was batting like fifth or sixth. Lindor wasn't batting leadoff yet. I mean, it was a totally different team.
I don't know. That
Iglesias
sounds
wasn't
like a good
called up
lineup to me,
yet.
Frank.
I mean,
That
that
sounds
was an
like a great
ugly team
lineup to
they
me,
had.
Frank. I don't know about you. I,
Oof.
I like that lineup. I feel like we should probably do that for this game instead of this one that they have out right now.
That's what
But
we're saying,
again,
though. They've come a
we'll
long
see.
way. I mean, to get where they
They
are
have come
now
a long
compared
way.
to the lineup they were trotting out there, and we're very quickly become one of the worst teams in the National League. Like, wow. Wow.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's definitely been quite the road, let's just say, this year. And the roller coaster's not even done. We're still here. Again, we've still survived so much. Like I've said, the motto continues to be: you get punched in the gut, you punch back even harder, which has just been continued to be that mentality that this team continues to display. So for those of you in here, before we end things off, I want to let you guys know, please like the stream if you have not already. Hit the subscribe button for those of you watching out on Twitter. Make sure to come over to our YouTube because it's the best way to communicate with us. Of course, we have the post game coming up after Game 3, which will be our podcast that will be available on audio the next day at 9 a.m. All that good stuff. Follow us individually. All of those links are in the description. I do want to revert to the poll that we have on here. asking you guys who you think will win game 3. 69% of you are saying the Mets, 20% of you are saying the Phillies, and 11% of you are pleading the fifth. You don't want to jinx anything. Again, like I said, regarding Mets fans' feelings about the team going in, you don't want to put out anything in there, the universe, because the Mets, we all know, can defy all logic whatsoever. That's just been their thing. As we have said, like I said earlier, no one's running away with it. As we've all said, no one has been running away with this playoff run, and it makes it a little bit more exciting. It makes it a little bit more, let's just say, I'm not saying aggravating, but nerve-wracking for a lot of the fan bases of teams that are in here. But it's going to be competitive, and it continues to be. You have some teams that beat teams. Some teams have their day, and then some teams have the better day. I mean, I'd say that the most competitive series so far in this division series has been this series. I mean, both teams in both games continue to just trade punches back and forth. The Mets were competitive throughout like those first 8 innings of game 1. They kept fighting back in game 2. It has definitely been a really good series so far. It's lived up to the hype. You're only expecting even more pressure and more back-to-back punches rolled. But this time it's from our home field, which is great to see. Like I said, it's been 16 days since we played a game at Citi Field. We didn't know if we were going to play another game at Citi Field regarding what was going on in Milwaukee. And all it took was one Pete Alonso swing to send us here. So that was pretty good. Our guy Ibby coming in here from Till Mets Do Us Part. Shout out to him saying, get fucking amped up, boys. Win a ball game. Absolutely. You know me. You can see me. I'm hyped up. I haven't had any caffeine today. So, I need a little bit of a boost when it comes to that. But when it comes to just overall thoughts going into the game, of course, the full-on confidence level. Guys, let us know in the chat what you guys think. 1 to 10 of this game. The Mets' chances of winning this game going into their home field for the first time in 16 days. Frank, I'll go to you. What do you got? 1 to 10.
Yeah, I think it's probably around a 6 or so. I still feel like we said with Manaea, he could go either way. With Nola, he can go either way. So, I mean, it's something that could change quickly, though. Like, if we could see right away that Manaea has it and Nola doesn't, then all of a sudden, sure, it shoots up and it can shoot up quick. But I feel like until we see it on the actual field, I still have some concerns about the bullpen. I mean, just kind of seeing the way it went last game, like they had to go to so many different guys to try to step up, and they're still giving up runs. And even in the first game where they had the lead, I mean, Stanley gives up the run late. So I feel like with how good this Phillies offense is, how good this Phillies pitching is, you can't just be giving away like a run here and a run there. So I would really like to see this bullpen step up. I'm hoping now that, like you said, Reed Garrett's available, Stanek has a little more rest, should be okay. But still, like you said with the Mets, they just defy all logic. So you never know. And it's called Mets Weekly, so you'd think it would be about
Van
the
Helsey.
Mets.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's saying this is obviously
It's
a
not
Mets
Phillies
dominant
Weekly.
podcast. I mean, what was your first clue, man? I would like to know.
There's blue everywhere. I mean,
yeah,
like,
I think that there's confidence in this team. I definitely do think that, the Mets fans that are watching here, they hear what we say, they hear what, they have what they think, they give their opinions. And there definitely is, a little bit of a boost of confidence, mainly because, like I said, you have a little bit more of, you have a little bit more, confidence and not just mainly because there's just like, I feel like this team is just a little bit more calm going into this. The Phillies, again, like we've said, just with the pressure that they have, it's do or die for them. And the Mets are kind of just, we're happy to be here. We're chilling, but when it comes to, again, if you're a Phillies fan and you're here, you're watching the coverage, you're trying to spy on us, by all means, we welcome everyone here. I'm sure when it comes to, us losing, if we were to lose, this series, I'm sure there's going to be Phillies fans in here that are going to try to talk shit. But when you win, you win. You earned it. I mean, I don't know what to say unless, there's some controversial thing in there. But, when it comes to, how competitive this series, we knew that it was going to be. I do think this is going to go to 5 games personally. And, hopefully you know, hopefully the Mets can come out victorious. And if they don't, like we've said, there's tons of pivots, there's tons of ways in it. But you know, the heights of expectations are a lot different. Let's just say that. But um, as for going forward after the game, as we usually do, 15 to 20 minutes after game 3 will be our post game. That will be the podcast that will go up on audio, of course. And you know, everybody is welcome. Everybody, all fan bases, like we've seen in the chat here, every single fan base is welcome over here. They can give their opinions. As long as you're not acting like the jackasses we had calling into the show the other day, everything's okay. You know, any trash talk is fine as long as you are respectful and not just making an ass of yourself and offending people all over here. So, other than that, I think we're going to wrap it up here. An hour in, we're going to give you guys, as per usual, like the little half hour to breathe before the game to absorb some of the content that we had in this show. Make sure to leave a like on the stream if you have not already. Subscribe to the Mets Weekly channel if you have not already. Follow us on Twitter, TikTok, all of us individually, including our third Mike, who I'm hoping could be here for the post game. Again, like sometimes he gets lost. It happens. But again, this is the pivotal game 3. Mets playing a home game for the first time in 16 days, like we have said. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be quite an atmosphere. Let's just say that. Game starts at 5 o'clock Eastern, first pitch. I believe Keith Hernandez is throwing out the first pitch to John Franco. It's a pretty cool thing. Daniel Murphy for game 4. So you got some postseason legends. Hopefully they can bless us on the Citi Field mound. But other than that, we'll see you guys for the post game later on. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, all that great stuff. And last thing, of course, let's go Mets. On to the pivotal game 3. Let's play some ball. All right. We'll see you guys next time.